Today we move on to piecewise defined and greatest integer functions. A piecewise defined function is one whose rule includes several formulas. The formula for each piece of the function is applied to certain values of the domain as specified in the definition of the function. All right, example 8, evaluating a piecewise defined function. I'll let you write this down before we go through it. Okay, for piecewise defined functions, this says f of x equals 2x plus 3 if x is less than 4. And it's x squared minus 1 if x is between 4 and 10. So what that means is that anytime that I'm plugging an x into here that's smaller than 4, I use the top equation. Anytime the number is between 4 and 10, I use the bottom equation and plug x into that one. That's all piecewise defined functions mean. So, for each of the following, if I'm plugging in f of negative 5, that means I need to plug negative 5 into one of these two equations. Which equation would I plug it into? The top or the bottom? I would plug it into the top because this is my x value. Negative 5 is less than 4, which means I plug it into the top equation. So f of negative 5 means that I do 2 times negative 5 plus 3. That's negative 10 plus 3, which is negative 7. Okay, if we had f of 8, which equation would we plug that into? It would go into the bottom one, because 8 is between 4 and 10. So f of 8 means that I plug it into the bottom one, so that would be 8 squared minus 1. 8 squared is 64, minus 1 is 63. For part C, the domain of f, that means what x values can I plug in here? So is there a lowest number that I could plug in that doesn't work for either of these? If I plug 3 in, that would work for the top equation. Can I get less than 3? I could do negative 3. I could do negative 20. I could do negative 1,000. I could do negative 1 million. Is there any limit to how low I can go? So it's negative infinity for my bottom. What about the top? What's the highest I can go? If I look at the top number, I can go up to, or the top equation, I can go up to 4, but then this one picks up at 4 and continues all the way up to 10. Is there anywhere for me to plug in 11? So let's say I ask you to find f of 11. Right, I couldn't plug it into the top equation because 11 is not less than 4, and I couldn't plug it into the bottom because 11 is not between 4 and 10. So this goes up to 10 and stops. And that's my domain. And the domain is any number that's possible to plug in. So I can plug in any negative number going down forever, all the way up to 10, and that would be defined. I could get an output value. If I try to plug an 11 in, it doesn't plug in anywhere, so there would be no solution, which means that 11 is not in the domain. The last number that works is 10. So that's our domain of f. The next one is the greatest integer function. The greatest integer function says that for any number x, I'm going to round down to the nearest integer that's less than or equal to x. So I'm rounding down to the number that's less than whatever number I plug in. The symbol for the greatest integer function is to put these brackets around an x. Okay, so the least the least integer that's less than or equal to the number. So I don't want to start at these negatives quite yet. Let's start at e, f of pi. What number is pi? Very nice, very nice. 3.14, isn't it 159? That's what I thought. So what's the least integer what's the integer that's less than this number that's closest to it? Do we know what an integer is? It's a whole number. So if you think about this, when you're thinking about the greatest integer function, the greatest integer function is just saying, like, if you owed me $3.14, I'll just take $3. So your answer for E would be $3. But it's not like rounding in the sense that you round up ever. In this case, you're always rounding down. Yeah, always round down. So 5 over 4 would round down to what? 5 over 4 is 1.2. That rounds down to, correct, 1. I don't know why I felt the need to write all that, but it's 1. What about 0? What does 0 round down to? Right, it's 0. It's already an integer. What about negative 3? No, it stays negative 3 because a negative is still an integer. All right, and this is probably the most difficult one. What does negative 4.7 round down to? Negative 5. So think about a number line. It's a really crooked number line. If I have negative 4.7, negative 4 would be here, and negative 5 would be here. I have to round down to negative 5. And that's it for greatest integer functions.